I am absolutely giddy today, you guys. I did it. I spoke to Kamala's uncle officially. And by the way, he's a gem. 10 out of 10. I really wish that he was running for president instead of her because he comes across as a very honest man. I'm going to tell you all about that conversation and how it's now led me to many more questions. So many more questions that I have about Kamala and her true heritage. Also, she's once again been asked about her racial identity. This happened just 3 days ago. And suddenly she's a little iffy on the answer. Kamala and me are now in a very particular kind of relationship. I'm like Maury, and she's essentially my guest. I'm asking her a question. Kamala, during your run as president, we asked you if your genealogy was actually Irish Indian.
You said no. The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Oh! Welcome back to Candace. Where to begin? Okay, so 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Kamala was asked again about her Black heritage, and suddenly she is getting a little iffy on the details. You can see she does not want to engage in the conversation, and the answer that she actually gives is fantastic. It is just fantastic, and we need to now pick it apart. So she appeared on a show called All the Smoke, and she was interviewed by the hosts, which are former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. I want you to pay very close attention to her answer here. Take a listen.
What do you think when you hear people kind of questioning just the fabric of who you are?
Well, one, I don't listen to it.
Okay.
I'm really clear about who I am, and if anybody else is not, they need to go through their own level of therapy. That's not my issue.
Their issues, right?
My mother was very clear. She was raising two Black girls to be two proud Black women, and it was never a question. You know, it's funny because over the years, journalists, some, not most, will want to talk about it. And I say, okay, if you want to have this conversation, I'm prepared to have it, but sit down and get comfortable for a few hours. If you want to start talking about race in America, you want to talk about the 1/8 rule?
A drop.
You want to talk about what it means in terms of who you are perceived to be and the impact that can have on the rest of your life, regardless of who you actually are in terms of your God-given capacity and the rights that you have and should have. So, you know, I don't mess with that. I think that's other people trying to figure some stuff out that and they
got some issues.
They got to deal with it.
Wow. So she just doesn't answer the question at all. Right. So before we had her really leaning into being Black. Now all of a sudden she doesn't even mess with that. I don't mess with that. I don't even mess with that. They need to go to therapy. She's pulling this Freudian technique. Obviously, you know, I've spoken to you about Freud, who was a disgusting human being who essentially gaslit women who were actually being abused by their fathers. So what she's doing is this exact same Freudian technique of gaslighting people by being like, actually, you need therapy. The problem is you. The problem is actually you for asking the question. No, Kamala, we're asking the question because you made this a theme in your bookie book, which we're going to get to in a little bit, okay? So you don't get to now just not address the question whatsoever. Put yourself in her shoes, okay? I'm going to put myself in her shoes. I'm running for president of the United States, okay? And these questions keep popping up about whether or not I am Black. Do you know how simple it would be to simply answer the question? List your Black relatives in 4 seconds. I would be like, this is my grandma, this is my grandpa. Suddenly she's a little iffy on the details here. Why didn't she just say, yes, obviously my grandmother is Beryl. Here's a picture of her. She's Black. I'm disgusted with the people that are even calling this into question. Here's my great grandmother, Iris Finnegan. I am obviously Black. Instead, she goes, oh, do you really want to talk about it? That's what I say. These shows, do you really want to talk about race? Do you really want to talk about the 1/8 rule? I mean, how dare she? And the answer is yes, Kamala. Actually, I would like to talk about it. Yeah, I'm actually totally up for talking about the 1-drop rule, the 1/8 rule. Let's discuss history. That's what those journalists should have done. That's what those former NBA players should have done, not giving her a free pass. I would have been like, no, ma'am, name your ancestors. And why are you bringing up the 1/8 rule at all? Let's talk about the history here, okay? The one-drop rule was actually a legal doctrine in the United States that was used as a means of racial classification, okay? It really dates back to the antebellum period in Virginia, where people of color were considered legally white if they had less than 25% African ancestry. So we're talking about something that was pre-Civil War, but then the classifications became especially relevant throughout Jim Crow in the South, obviously, because of segregation. So they're like, are you white or are you black? So they needed to know how to quantify whiteness and blackness. The laws were first officially codified in Tennessee as one of Virginia's racial integrity laws. They wanted birth certificates to just be very clear whether a parent was legally white or legally a Negro, so that it was known which laws in society you had to abide by. What about Indian Americans? Because strangely, she brings up her mom. You would think the first thing she would do would be to bring up her dad. Instead, she brings up her mom. She's like, my mom was very clear that she was raising two black women. Your mother is Indian, like fully 100% Indian. So the fact that the first person that you recall is a non-black person is suspicious. And regarding Indian Americans, just to be clear, in 1923, the Supreme Court decided in the United States versus Bhagat Singh Thind that Indians were classified as Caucasians, as they had been by anthropologists. They upheld that, but they also made it clear that they were not considered white. So that is probably the answer as to why her mother put Caucasian on her birth certificate. That was actually the legal classification for Indian women. Now, also regarding this one-drop rule, Kamala Harris was never subject to it ever in her entire lifetime. She was born in California. Just to be clear, that was the very first state to end segregation, and they did that back in 1947. So they did it 7 years before the Supreme Court decision of Brown versus Education, which federalized desegregating all of the schools. So it actually infuriates me that she does this, that she essentially goes back and pretends that she's lived through something. Like, well, let's talk about the one-drop rule. Why are we discussing the one-drop rule? By the way, even if you were subjected to it, you probably would have passed, since none of your parents are listed as Negroes on your birth certificate. Like, what are you doing mining the history of Black people that came before you and who you are still refusing to name? You put them in a book once, but that was it. Now you don't want to talk about Grandma Beryl. What's up with that? Now you don't want to talk about great-grandma Iris Finnegan. What is up with that? And by the way, as I was considering that, her upbringing and how strange it is that she keeps leaning into this idea, like she was born 2 years before my mother was born, and my mother didn't live through segregation. My mother didn't live through any of this stuff. These are not her memories. These are the memories of my grandparents. My grandfather lived through segregation. I'm going, why does Kamala keep doing this? Like acting like she grew up in the 40s and in the 50s with these sorts of memories. And then I remembered suddenly that she did this on stage a while ago, where she got almost teary-eyed and emotional talking about busing and desegregation. I'm going to roll that back for you just to jog your memory. Take a listen.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Okay. Oh my God. Guys, so you watch that clip, okay? You're an American. You see she's getting a little choked up, and you can instantly assume that what she means is that she was like a Ruby Bridges. Yeah, like that little girl was me in second grade. I was a part of the second class to be desegregated. Like that instantly signals, given the emotionality of it, that she was a Ruby Bridges. Talk about mining Black history. Well, let me be clear. She intentionally misled people here to make them believe that she was a young Ruby Bridges. This is how disgusting and despicable this woman is. She wanted people to go back in their minds to all they learned about Ruby Bridges, the images of Ruby Bridges having to be protected by police as she entered into that school in Louisiana. She wanted people to go back in their minds to that. That's why she's getting all choky. She's like on the brink of tears. That little girl. So to be perfectly clear here, that little girl went to Thousand Oaks Elementary School in Berkeley, and far from that impression she's giving, she did not live through any desegregation or any real desegregation at all, because as I mentioned, the schools had already gone through that before she was born, literally before she was born in 1947. In fact, the school district had to issue a statement after that performance on stage. And this is what they had to put up on their website for clarification. They wrote, "There has been some confusion in the media and social media around the Berkeley schools and integration due to the fact that our high school was already integrated, as evidenced, for example, by high school yearbooks, which show children of many race and ethnicities at school together prior to 1968. In Berkeley, we only have one comprehensive high school, so it was integrated by default. Our elementary schools, however, reflected the racial composition of our neighborhoods, which, like many neighborhoods across America, reflected the history of segregation stemming from policies which restricted the opportunities of non-white residents." So then they go on, "We recently celebrated the 50-year anniversary of our voluntary busing plan." And you can find additional details here. So let me clarify to you what actually happened in her childhood. There was no desegregation effort that she had to live through. She was not Ruby Bridges. Rather, what they realized was because of the past in which you had Black people all living in one neighborhood, and this was contributed sometimes because of like red line districting. You had Black people living in one neighborhood. You had white people living in one neighborhood. What ended up happening was that you had schools which were like majority Black and which were majority white. And so what they wanted to do in Berkeley was to be the first to offer a busing plan to turn that around so that the buses would pick up students that lived far from the white school and bring them over there so that the schools would be more evenly mixed. That's what she's describing. So after they put and implemented this busing plan, Kamala was the second or third class since they had implemented this busing plan. Nothing to do with desegregation, just an effort to say, okay, we're realizing now if people are just districted according to where they live, you're going to have these schools that are like 85% Black and some schools that are 85% white. That's what it is. So just thinking about the emotionality and how tricky she's being here, again, trying to allude to like some Ruby Bridges scenario, really makes me angry. It is just so unacceptable. I just can't stand this fraud. And it's so important to state also that the one-drop rule was declared officially unconstitutional in 1967. That was just 3 years after Kamala was born. This is just not her childhood at all. Not her childhood at all. This is just what she does. She lies and she lies and she lies. But it gets better. It gets better. But first, I'm going to remind you guys about preborn, because Kamala is indeed the first vice presidential candidate to ever visit an abortion facility. And Tim Walz supported a bill in his home state which legalized the denial of life-saving medical care to infants born alive after botched abortions. The media has dubbed this the abortion election. We have to stand up to this evil. When you join forces with Preborn, the largest pro-life organization in the nation, you are protecting the greatest victims in our society, babies that are in their mother's wombs. Preborn's network of clinics are positioned in the highest abortion areas in the nation, and they have rescued over 300,000 babies. When a woman considering an abortion searches to end her baby's life, Preborn is there. Preborn gives them a free ultrasound. The power of hearing a heartbeat on an ultrasound combined with God's love doubles a baby's chance at life. One ultrasound costs just $28, and up to 5 ultrasounds are $140. Any gift will help their cause, and all gifts are tax deductible. To donate securely, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or you can go to preborn.com/Candace. That's preborn.com/Candace. So like I said, it gets better because yesterday I was going through her book that I downloaded. I downloaded that so that you didn't have to, because I wanted to send a picture of her grandma Beryl to someone. So initially, when we started looking into the story, my producer had downloaded the book. I had downloaded the book, but he had stumbled upon the picture of Beryl. So I hadn't actually flipped through the ebook that I had downloaded. And so remarkably, it was kind of the first time I was going to the picture segment looking for Beryl, and I realized Beryl's not in this book. I was going, wait, what's going on? This is her book. Where is the Beryl picture? And I said to my producer, like, did we make a mistake? Like, this is definitely in the book. He pulls his up. He has a picture of Beryl. Mine doesn't. I'm going, is this a different edition of the book? And yes, it was. There were actually 2 publications of the book. One in January of 2019. And then 5 months later, in May of 2019, they published what is known as a young readers edition. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's meant to be for younger readers, and it's typically more pictorial, right? So they want to change a couple of words, essentially kind of dumb it down to make it easier to read and include more pictures. Yet in this edition, they decided to remove pictures. And it's just, I guess, ironic that the pictures that they removed for the young readers later edition were pictures of Black Iris and Grandma Beryl. There were more pictures that were removed, but the family members were all still there, except for Black Iris and Grandma Beryl. I found that to be extremely interesting. But suddenly I realized that I had never flipped through the book that had more pictures than the edition that I was holding. And I started going through them, and you guys are not even going to believe just how diabolical Kamala Harris is. It was just, I'm going to have to just go through this calmly, because I am telling you, as a Black person, it's actually offensive how hard she tried to Blackify herself. And it made me think of the entire Emmanuel Macron, Brigitte Macron scandal, because the journalist that broke that story essentially said that what they do when they're running is they publish a book, and that is the legend that is established, essentially, because people in their minds think, oh, well, if it's in a book and a publisher agreed to publish it, HarperCollins published this book about Kamala, they must have fact-checked this, and all of this must be true. People have this wrong perception that if a book is published as nonfiction, that there was some effort of due diligence, which means that everything that you're reading is not fiction. So they do this. Like it's like a rite of passage. I'm publishing this book, and I'm expecting everyone to just accept this as the legend of Kamala Harris. I'm going through these pictures, okay? And aside from Iris, aside from Beryl, she also decided to include some other, what I would describe as noteworthy pictures of herself. Like this one, where she writes, "Sporting my fro, summer of 1970. But basically, you just know when you go through this that they essentially sat down as a team and were like, we're creating the legend. We need you to be Black. Okay, this was published again in 2019. And they're like, we need that Black vote. Let's make it easy. Give me the blackest photos of you that you can possibly find. Like, to put the caption of her afro is just signaling to Black people, hey, I'm Black, which is ridiculous because there's so many other races that have afros. Puerto Ricans have afros. Spanish people have afros. Jewish people have afros. Mark, my director, is Jewish. He has an afro, okay? It is not like proprietary to Black people, but she's publishing this because like you're just supposed to look at the picture and go, oh, well, she's got an afro. I guess she's Black. She literally wrote that, okay? Then, of course, if you could imagine this team sitting down trying to process how to sell Black, you would go, well, Harlem, right? You got to put some pictures of Harlem here. And there are pictures of her in Harlem. Look at this photo. She just posts up right here, visiting my Uncle Freddie in Harlem. Harlem was always a magical place for me. Now, what's interesting about this picture is the man behind, I don't know if that's actually her Uncle Freddie, right? Like that came to my mind. I'm like, is this just like a guy working on the side of the street and she's just like including him because this picture shows a Black man that's in Harlem and again signals to Black people that like she's with her uncle up in Harlem? Kind of feels that way. But then I realized that she featured some more pictures of her Black aunties and her Black uncles, and we see Uncle Fred again. Take a look at this photo. This is going to drive you guys crazy because I still can't believe it when I read it. So you see three obviously Black people in this photo. You would not question the authenticity of their Blackness. And the caption reads, "I'm blessed with an amazing family. I'll never be able to thank Auntie Chris, Uncle Freddie, and Aunt Mary enough for their constant encouragement and support. They always showed up for me, as they did here at a campaign event for my DA's race that we held at a San Francisco, you guessed it, jazz club, because, hey, we're talking Harlem, we're talking Black people, we're talking afros. Let's also post a picture of you in a jazz club with your aunties and your uncles. And like Black people will just accept that you only have all these photos because you're like super Black. But then I said, wait a second, she doesn't have an Aunt Mary or an Aunt Chris, or an Uncle Fred. I've been deep in this woman's genealogy. Who are we talking about here? These people do not exist. And I said, is it possible that like somewhere in the book that she's alleging, probably assuming that no one is going to actually read through, she acknowledges that these aren't her real aunties and uncles? And the answer is yes, my friends. There's a passage about Aunt Mary and Uncle Freddie in this book, The Truths We Hold, which is really just the greatest trick ever played on Black America. She writes this: "My mother surrounded herself with close friends who were really more like sisters. My godmother, a fellow Berkeley student whom I knew as Aunt Mary, was one of them. They met through the civil rights movement that was taking shape in the early 1960s and was being debated and defended from the streets of Oakland to the soapboxes in Berkeley's Sproul Plaza. As Black students spoke out against injustice, a group of passionate, keenly intelligent, politically engaged young men and women found one another. My mother and Aunt Mary among them. They went to peaceful protests where they were attacked by police with hoses. They marched against the Vietnam War and for civil rights and voting rights. They went together to see Martin Luther King Jr. speak at Berkeley, and my mother had a chance to meet him. She told me that at one of these anti-war protests, the marchers were confronted by the Hells Angels. She told me that at another, she and her friend were forced to run for safety with me in a stroller after violence broke out against the protesters. But my parents and their friends were more than just protesters. They were big thinkers, pushing big ideas, organizing their community. Aunt Mary, her brother, my uncle Freddie, my mother and father, and about a dozen other students organized a study group to read the Black writers that the university was ignoring." So you guys, what can I say here? I am being reduced to sound effects. She wrote this book and she starts the sentence with her family. She's visiting her family in Harlem. This is maybe, she wrote, "I have the best family," and shows multiple pictures of an Uncle Fred that isn't her Fred. Why did she do this? It's not her uncle, okay? It's just not her uncle. It's her mom's friend. And she dedicates so much time to him and the protests. And she's dropping Martin Luther King. And she's dropping W.E.B. Du Bois. And she's dropping so many other people that are Black in this book. For what reason? Because she's performing. Because this is a sleight of hand. Because they quite literally likely sat around in a boardroom and they said, "How can we make you Black? I want to see every photo of you ever taken. And I'm going to tell you what in people's minds will just read like Blackness." So we've got Ruby Bridges now in people's memory, being embedded in people's memory. Now we've got this idea of her marching aunties and uncles in Harlem. It's just so unacceptable. It is so unacceptable. After going through all these photos, I made a joke to my producer and director. I was like, "Oh, what's next? Is there going to be a picture of her just like eating collard greens and cornbread? Is she going to be like, 'This is me eating collard greens and cornbread. I'm in Harlem.'" And they said back to me, no, she's done that. I said, no. I said, "Shut up. That's not true. She's not done that. There's no way." They said, "Yeah, no, there are clips of her speaking about collard greens." I said, "I cannot believe this. Produce me the clip." And they did. Here it is.
I have a friend who had a Christmas party, Christmas Eve every year, and she asked me to make the greens for a party every year. And I am not lying to you that I would make so many greens that I'd need to wash them in the bathtub. I'm telling you the truth.
So how do you make your greens? Do you put turkey in them? Do you
Bacon.
Nice. My grandma
I do
puts
bacon.
She puts
Garlic.
vinegar.
I put white vinegar.
Yes.
So I start with, I slice up my garlic. Well, but no, first I chop up the bacon
fry it.
and get all that fat going. Then I put garlic,
Yeah.
some chili peppers,
Yes.
and then a lot of water and a little chicken stock. And I let it go for a while
Flowers.
before I put the greens in. And then, right, so you get that going and all that flavor. And then I put the greens in for a couple hours. Then I do vinegar. And then I cheat and do a little Tabasco.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
My
but
grandmother-
Tabasco of all, like I like Louisiana hot sauce,
Yeah.
but Tabasco has that right amount of
The
vinegar.
tang
Yeah.
on it, yeah.
And that's how I do my greens.
I see why you get invited every year.
And she brought it up again at another event. Take a listen.
Right, Marlon. So I know how to make a mean pot of greens. In fact, people used to ask me to make greens for them for Christmas. One year, I had so many that I had to wash that we ended up washing them in the bathtub. So I am not playing around.
Black America, listen to me. I'm speaking directly to you because I am not playing around either. If I catch you voting for this woman, I'm going to haunt you. I'm going to haunt you in your dreams. There will be nowhere that you can go where I will not haunt you. This is just, we have to come together. At some point in society, we have to come together to declare this unacceptable. Like, I don't care where you sit on the spectrum. This is the most not okay thing that I have ever seen in the history of politics. This is how she's shoring up Black votes. She's going around talking about collard greens, putting in fake pictures of her uncles and aunties that are Black, while conveniently ignoring all of her aunties and uncles that are white. And people are just eating this up. Let me find that woman that was going, okay, to all that vinegar put into her call. Okay, let me find her. I'm going to haunt her. I promise you that. But of course, guys, let's get to me speaking to her uncle, because that actually happened. Like I promised you yesterday. I said I had a phone call. I was trying to wait for it to happen yesterday. Well, it happened last night. Part one of our phone call happened last night. We briefly spoke on the phone, I would say for about 10 minutes. And I first want to say just how much I liked this guy. I just had a feel like, okay, I'll be honest. I have a Caribbean bias. My former producer made it very clear to me that I have a Caribbean bias because she'd pitch me stories or like say like Rihanna did this. And I'd be like, I'm not going to say anything bad about Rihanna, or like Nicki Minaj. And she's like, but I have a Caribbean bias. This guy's got a Caribbean accent. My grandma had a very thick St. Tomian accent. So it was just like, I could sense his Caribbean calm. I can't explain to you. And I could just also sense that he was being incredibly honest and forthright. And he was speaking to me. And it was actually like very, I guess I would say just beautiful in a way, because he cared about this. He wanted to reach out because he cares so much about Vioris, and he doesn't want whatever is going on with Kamala to make people have this perception of Vioris. And I told him right away that it was never my intention for him to get inundated. So I want to be clear. My understanding is that it's the press calling, but I want to make sure that there are no Candace Owens viewers that are going out there calling any of these relatives that are still alive, because we can find information online, but we definitely should not be harassing her relatives who have nothing to do with her running, and in many cases don't even agree with her politics. Like this person that I spoke to is a Candace Owens fan, conservative, as many Caribbeans are conservative, because on the islands that it's just not a lot of wokeness. I'll leave it at that. Why are you gay kind of a vibe going on. You are gay. It's a little bit more of like an island vibe. Anyways, I just said to him, look, we're just trying to get questions answered about Kamala's heritage because of her father's paper. I said, I have a lot of questions about your brother, Donald Harris. I just am not understanding anything in this paper. And I went through the holes in it. I went through the fact that, he mentions this person growing up, like they all kind of grew up on a farm together, but you're asking the question, like Beryl married this person. Why is he trying to make it seem like everyone grew up as one happy family? Why didn't he even mention Vioris at all, which is kind of the dog that didn't bark? And I asked him directly if he knew the Miss Iris that he is referring to in this book, in the Miss Iris that Donald J. Harris is referring to in his piece, rather, who he says is Iris Nay Finnegan. Again, very strange, because Iris should have never been Nay Finnegan. Finnegan was her married name. And he said, I can't answer that. I don't know that name. I want to be very clear. He has a relationship with Donald. He is close with Donald. They grew up together. He considers Donald his full brother. He has no idea who Miss Iris Finnegan is. This is Donald's brother that we're talking about. So I said, okay, that's of course of some interest to me. I asked him why it is that he's even then mentioning this Miss Iris. And he told me that he wanted to clarify something which was of most importance to me. He wanted me to know that before Vioris and Oscar Harris got married, Oscar Harris already had 3 children, okay? One of them being Donald. Now, to be clear, he is younger than Donald, a lot younger than Donald, so he wouldn't know much about if there was some family secret. He would not be aware of it, but to the best of his knowledge, like this is what he was told, that they had 3 children before Vioris and Oscar got married. And I asked him, quite frankly, if he knew or heard of Beryl. He told me he does not know Beryl. instant red flag to me. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how do you not know if you have a half sibling that you are close to and have been close to your whole life? How do you not know who their mom is? He said, I don't know who his mother is. You don't know who Donald Harris's mom is. The woman who started this entire thing, Beryl Finnegan, like the person who just flagged me as weird, something is not right here. We now know that Donald Harris's brother does not know him, okay? Like I said, he said that Oscar Harris had 3 children before he married Vioris. He mentioned that Donald was very close to them. He also said that Oscar Harris's children all had businesses, that Donald, when he was coming up, Donald was in university. They kept very close to him. He said that Donald has always been very, very private, and he doesn't like publicity. And I find that to be very interesting. What people, yeah, sure, there are some people who are exceedingly private, and there are some people who are exceedingly private because they have something to hide. And I, again, do not feel that Donald Harris was telling the truth about his upbringing. I think he gave some truths and kind of made it very murky in his Jamaican heritage piece, but some things that were objectively proven to be untrue. He told me that Kamala definitively knows Vioris, that he also knows her, that she visited Jamaica twice with her father, and that sometime after she had graduated college, she went down to Florida with her sister and she visited Vioris. So she had a relationship with Vioris. Unfortunately, Vioris did not make her book. And I think we know why Vioris did not make her book. Now, I have no reason not to believe the person that I spoke to. I just felt that he was being very authentic and he was there to simply clarify some things and that he didn't know the answers to some things. He authentically didn't know. And if he is telling me something that is not correct, then the reason why those things are not correct is not because he's trying to lie, but it's because he is not aware of them. So it leads us again to more questions about Donald Harris. Who is this guy? Who is his mother? Where is Beryl? Okay, where is Iris Finnegan? Why won't Kamala, who felt so, I guess, close enough to Beryl and Iris to include them in their book, why won't she even mention them as an easy way to debunk what is being said? Why is she even mentioning the 1/8 rule? What are you talking about, Kamala? If you're telling us that your grandmother is Beryl, she looks pretty black to us, like that would make you more than 1/8 black. What's going on here? Why are we getting all iffy on the details? We've got a couple of lingering questions here, and I'll tell you what we are starting to think about. But first, I want to remind you to drink coffee because we are not letting go of the story. You're going to need a lot of coffee. If you're going to drink a coffee, it should be 7 Weeks Coffee because it is America's pro-life coffee company on a mission to fund the pro-life movement 1 cup of coffee at a time. Now, why are they called 7 Weeks Coffee? Because at 7 weeks, a baby is the size of a coffee bean, and it's the same time a heartbeat is clearly detected on an ultrasound. That's why they donate 10% of every sale to support pregnancy care centers across the country. They have raised over $500,000 for these centers and have saved over 5,000 lives by providing them free ultrasounds and other resources to moms in need. Now I'm going to tell you about the coffee because I'm very picky about what I put into my body. It's mold-free, pesticide-free, it's shade-grown, it's low acid, and it's organically farmed. It truly checks all the boxes. So exclusively for my listeners, go to 7weekscoffee.com and use code Candace for up to 25% off your order. Remember, your order will directly help support a network of over 900 pro-life organizations across the U.S. That's 7weekscoffee.com and use code Candace for up to 25% off your order. Okay, now let's get into some other leads. So we have a couple of interesting things that are happening, some things that we are exploring. Someone has found, okay, and this is, by the way, we'd be in conspiracy land. We got nothing more than like a visual, and I can say by the visual, this woman does look like the Beryl that is pictured with Kamala that I said looks like a 60-year-old woman. I'll show you the photo right here. Okay, so somebody came across a woman who has the same name, Beryl, who is still alive, very, very, very old. Now, this woman is not at all related to Kamala, judging by who her son is and doing that sort of a thing. She's not related to Kamala, but again, she has that same name. She's still alive, and we have confirmed that she is from that same town, that same place, Brownstown, Jamaica. So we know she would have been there at the same time. And like I said, she resembles the person that Kamala is trying to pass off as her grandma. Could this be the help? Could this be a woman that they just took a picture with? We're going to explore that lead, but first, a bigger lead. And now I can send all of you guys to hunt and figure things out. By the way, I'm depressed because next week I'm on vacation, which means that we're going to have to stop this. Like tomorrow will be the last day of the investigation before we have to pause for a week and come back after Columbus Day. But anyways, here is something that you guys can help with. So remember in Donald J. Harris's piece, he mentioned only a sister, despite the fact that he has like at least 5 other siblings. He only mentioned Enid Maud Harris. He just calls her Enid. We were able to find her because one of you guys sent us a file, and it is confirmed that Enid is the sister that Donald Harris had, which predates his Oscar Harris's marriage to Vioris. And it turns out that she is just a half sister. We were able to determine this because we found her marriage certificate where both of her parents' names are listed. I'm going to show that to you right now so you can see that Enid Maud Harris got married at St. Peter's Church. This was in New York. And that she married a man named Hugh Ashton Watts. Okay. And you can see listed under her parents, we have Oscar Joseph Harris, and we also have Perline Curry. We cannot find Perline Curry, and we cannot find Hugh Ashton Watts. Now, both of these people would be dead today. Okay, so again, we're just asking you to crawl through online looking for documents to determine who these people are. It's like without a trace. We know that Enid is still alive. Obviously, Enid is very advanced in age, so do not call Enid and ask any questions. We are not okay with that. We are not here to harass elderly people. We're just looking for answers because there is a plausibility that maybe Perline Curry is his true mother that he's not telling us about. Maybe Perline Curry is Kamala Harris's grandmother and not Beryl, right? So again, we have questions here, and the fact that we can't find Perline Curry, we just want to know what race she is, what she looks like. That's really kind of the information that we're looking for. And again, a good start here is you can find Perline Curry, or if you can find Hugh Ashton Watts. And we know that they got married in New York. We know that they lived at least for a short time in the Bronx. We're sending you guys out to explore those leads as we continue to try to get to the bottom of Kamala's heritage, because I personally do not accept that I need therapy, as she says. If you are even asking a question, you need therapy. No. Like I said, we are only here because you sent out your media goons to go after Janet Jackson and to try to paint her as crazy. We're only here because we have now arrived at the stage where you've gone from bringing Megan Thee Stallion out to shake her butt, you're walking out to Beyonce, you're talking about collard greens, you're dropping fake black relatives to kind of persuade people that you have this black upbringing, you're talking about Harlem. You don't get to pull a 180 and pretend that it's irrelevant. Okay? Because when Trump was on stage and he said to you, look, I don't care whatever she is. Well, let me tell you, I disagree with him. I care. You've now caught my attention, okay? And common sense says to me that if any person was put in a seat and asked about their heritage and someone said, what do you think about these rumors that you aren't black? All you would do is start listing your relatives that are black and say how foolish it was. And she's not doing that. She's instead running Operation Gaslighting. And you know what? Shame on those people. Shame on Matt Barnes for not pushing her. Put her feet to the fire. You don't get to just mine black history and black pain to try to present yourself as the first black female presidential candidate. It doesn't work like this. It's completely unacceptable. Nobody would have cared if you ran and you said, I am Indian Irish. Not a single soul would have cared. Okay? You did this. And we're not going to let it go because nobody messes with Janet Jackson. All right, guys, before we get into your comments, I want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Nimi Skincare. It's my favorite skincare brand out there. You see me using it on Instagram. They've come to now be known as America's Skincare Company because they formulate and manufacture all of their skincare products here in the USA while supporting pro-American causes and organizations. Nimi Skincare is true American luxury skincare, but their prices are affordable since they deliver directly to your door and cut out the big box retailer middleman. Nimi has everything you need to build an awesome daily skincare regimen to cleanse, brighten, protect, and help fight the key signs of aging. Another reason reason that I love Nimi is that they are a Christian-led company that stands firm in their values of faith, family, and freedom. So sign up right now at NimiSkincare.com for a subscription to save 15% on your routine and save an additional 5% using code Candace at checkout. Plus, you'll receive a free gift on every third order. If you aren't sure where to start, take their skincare quiz to find the perfect routine for your skin type. That's Nimi, Nimi, skincare.com, promo code Candace today. All right, let's read some of your comments. We're reading this from yesterday's episode because I have an event tonight, so I pre-recorded this a couple of hours earlier. This person, Trisha, writes, at this point, Candace knows more about Kamala's heritage than probably Kamala herself. I know. Actually, what's funny is I obviously am slated to speak to that relative again, hopefully later today, but I did via text ask, by the way, what do you think about the Jewish thing? Like, is that part true? And he didn't say no to that. So maybe he's just learning it, maybe he knows it, or maybe he's just learning it. But I thought that was pretty interesting. I probably literally do maybe know more than some of the relatives. And maybe he's learning as he's watching this going, I didn't even know this. And yeah, why don't I know like who my brother's mom is? Like that is kind of weird. Like, is there a secret that's being kept from me? Yes, I really might be Maury. I might be exploding family secrets at the moment, but that's what happens when you run for president. Nangi writes, these series about Kamala are so interesting. As a former resident of Montreal, Canada for almost 30 years, I can assure you there was nothing middle class about the neighborhood where she lived. It's one of the most high-end neighborhoods of the city. She's such a fraud. Keep up the amazing research work. May God protect you, Candace, your team, and your family. Yeah, I am really feeling some type of way about the level of fraud that she has aspired to here. And like I said, when I was just going through those pictures and really understanding, getting the full picture of how hard they tried to establish the legend of her blackness, I was infuriated. I was just like, no, this is not acceptable. We have to have some ground rules here. Across party lines, we have to agree. I don't care if you're like a lefty that's scared about the environment and you want to drive, a car that's electric. That's actually cool with me. Like, we can lock arms here as long as we can agree that this is unacceptable. Like, you cannot do this. You cannot Ruby Bridget. You just can't. Happy Hearts writes, she could be mixed with hyena and some will still vote for her no matter what. It is true. Some people are deluded and they're like, oh, she talked about collard greens. That's black enough for me. What? She said it was in a bathtub. What? That actually doesn't even sound really sanitary to me, if I'm being honest. Imagine the skin. Ugh. Lynn writes, I wonder what Janet Jackson thinks right now. She made a random comment about Kamala's race in an interview, and now Candace turned into an investigator. Yeah, Janet Jackson, where are you at? Reach out to me. We'll have you on the show. I would love to sit down and speak with you about what you said. And I have your back. I'm like, Randy, I have your back. And the people that instantly try to pretend that you were crazy rather than answering the questions, it's not acceptable. We're not allowing that to happen anymore. They did it to your brother. They're not going to do it to you. Nina Gumbo writes, thank you for your journalism. I am from Europe, but I am scared because whoever will be in charge of the United States, it will affect all of us. You are brave to tell the truth and we will be watching. Thank you so much. It is true. America tends to cause that sort of ripple. And this woman scares me. There's something about someone that can move that easily in and out of an identity that should frighten all of us, all across the world. We should be frightened by it. Billy Jolene writes, lastly, so she came from a wealthy family, but stresses that she grew up middle class. Bull. Yeah, she will say whatever it is that she has to say to secure the black vote. And that is exactly why we must forcefully reject her. Not just black Americans, white Americans as well. You guys should be mad that she's denying your heritage. Like, what's so bad about being white? I'm angry for both of us. I'm angry for white people because there's nothing wrong with just saying that you are Irish, okay? There's nothing wrong with it. I'm angry for black people because she does not get to Ruby Bridget. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to keep supporting this investigation, head to locals.com. As I said, we're uploading documents there as we continue to look into everything. Sadly, tomorrow will be the last day before we have to take a 5-day break because I am going overseas, but it's okay because I have content for you, but it's just not going to be about Kamala. But it allows me more time to research things. So continue to email us at info@CandaceOwens.com or post things onto our locals page. We can share, collaborate. So many of you guys have presented so much information that we really couldn't have done this without you. So we'll see you tomorrow.